On September 10th, 2001, 31-year-old Dr. Sneha and Philip went shopping in Manhattan. Security cameras captured her buying shoes and lingerie at a department store at 4 p.m. She was never seen again. The next day, September 11th, the World Trade Center towers collapsed just blocks from where she lived. For over 2 decades, investigators have tried to answer one devastating question. Did Sneha die helping victims on September 11th? Or did she disappear the night before? This is the haunting story of a woman who vanished in the shadow of America's darkest day. This case is unlike any other missing persons case you've heard. It's a mystery wrapped inside a national tragedy. It's a story where the truth has been fought over in courts, debated by investigators, and torn apart by families who see 2 completely different versions of the same woman. Sneha and Philip's disappearance challenges everything we think we know about missing persons investigations. It asks uncomfortable questions about who gets to decide what happened when there's no body, no witnesses, and no clear evidence. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that this case involves real people who are still grieving. Sneha's family believes she died a hero on September 11th. Her husband's family believes something else happened. Both sides deserve respect as we examine the facts. Let's go back to early September 2001 to a young doctor living in Lower Manhattan whose life was far more complicated than anyone on the outside could have known. Sneha and Philip was born on October 7th, 1969, in Muscat, Oman, to Indian parents. Her family eventually immigrated to the United States, and Sneha grew up in upstate New York. She was bright, ambitious, and determined to become a doctor. Sneha attended the prestigious Chicago Medical School and earned her medical degree. She completed her residency in internal medicine and moved to New York City to pursue her career. By 2001, she was 31 years old and working as a resident physician at Cabrini Medical Center in Manhattan. In 1997, Sneha married Ronald Lieberman, a man she'd met through friends. Ron was a computer technician, analytical and quiet, the opposite of Sneha's more outgoing personality. The couple seemed happy at first, but those close to them would later say there were problems from early on. In 2001, Sneha and Ron lived in an apartment at 2 Warren Street in Battery Park City, Manhattan. This is important. Their apartment was literally 3 blocks from the World Trade Center. Their building had a direct view of the Twin Towers. By all outward appearances, Sneha had the life many people dream of: a medical degree, a career helping people, a husband, and a home in one of the world's most exciting cities. But beneath the surface, Sneha's life was falling apart. In the months before her disappearance, several troubling things had happened. In March 2001, Sneha was placed on probation at Cabrini Medical Center. Hospital administrators had concerns about her work performance. There were allegations she'd shown up late to shifts, and there were questions about her professionalism. Some reports suggested she'd been drinking on the job, though this was never definitively proven. By August 2001, Sneha had been terminated from her position at Cabrini. She was unemployed and had been job hunting without success. For someone who had worked so hard to become a doctor, losing her position was devastating. Sneha and Ron's marriage was strained. Ron would later tell investigators that Sneha had become distant. She was staying out late, sometimes not coming home at all. When confronted, she'd be vague about where she'd been. Ron suspected Sneha was having an affair, possibly with a woman. Friends and family members would later confirm that Sneha had been questioning her sexuality. She told close friends she was attracted to women and was exploring her identity. Without her job, Sneha wasn't bringing an income. Credit card bills were piling up. Ron was supporting both of them on his salary, and the stress was mounting. Those close to Sneha noticed she was drinking more. She'd go out to bars in the village, sometimes alone, sometimes with friends. She seemed restless, unhappy, searching for something she couldn't name. The picture that emerges is of a woman at a crossroads, professionally lost, maritally struggling, personally confused about her identity. But nothing suggested she was in danger. Nothing suggested she would disappear. And then came Monday, September 10th, 2001. The weekend before Sneha's disappearance had been tense. Ron would later tell police that Sneha had been out late on Saturday night, September 8th. She came home in the early hours of Sunday morning without explaining where she'd been. Ron was frustrated, but didn't push the issue. On Sunday, September 9th, Sneha was home most of the day. She and Ron barely spoke. The atmosphere in the apartment was cold. Ron later said he spent the day working on his computer while Sneha stayed in the bedroom. That evening, Sneha told Ron she was going out. She left the apartment around 9 p.m. on Sunday night. Ron asked where she was going. She told him she was meeting a friend. She didn't say who. She didn't say where. This is crucial. Ron says that Sneha left on Sunday evening, September 9th, and never came home that night. When Ron went to bed Sunday night, Sneha wasn't there. When he woke up Monday morning, September 10th, she still hadn't returned. Ron wasn't overly concerned at first. Sneha had stayed out before. She'd spent nights at friends' places without always telling him. He assumed she'd come back during the day. Ron left for work on Monday morning. He worked in Midtown Manhattan, about 30 minutes from their apartment. His day was normal: meetings, phone calls, computer work. He tried calling Sneha a few times throughout the day. No answer. Meanwhile, according to credit card records and security camera footage, something very specific was happening with Sneha that Monday afternoon. Something that would become the most important piece of evidence in the entire case. Monday, September 10th, 2001, around 4 p.m. Century 21 department store in Lower Manhattan, just a few blocks from Sneha and Ron's apartment. Security cameras captured a woman who appears to be Sneha and Philip shopping in the store. The footage isn't crystal clear. This was 2001, before high-definition cameras were standard, but the woman is wearing clothing that matches what Sneha owned. The timestamp shows 4 p.m. Credit card records confirm that at approximately 4 p.m., Sneha's credit card was used to make purchases at Century 21. She bought 3 pairs of pantyhose, lingerie, bed linens, a dress. The total came to about $500. This was a significant shopping trip, especially for someone who was unemployed and dealing with financial stress. The purchases are important. Why would Sneha buy lingerie and bed linens? Ron later told investigators that their own bed linens were fine. There was no need for new ones. The lingerie wasn't Ron's size or style. Was she buying these items for someone else? For herself? Planning to go somewhere? After leaving Century 21 at approximately 4:30 p.m., Sneha and Philip vanished. There is no security camera footage of her leaving the store. There are no ATM transactions after that time. There are no phone calls. There are no credit card purchases. There are no witnesses who have definitively come forward saying they saw her after 4:30 p.m. on September 10th. Ron came home from work around 6:30 p.m. Sneha wasn't there. He noticed she still wasn't home, but again, he wasn't immediately worried. He made himself dinner, watched TV, did some work. By 10 p.m., he was becoming concerned. By midnight, he was worried. Ron tried calling Sneha's cell phone repeatedly. It went straight to voicemail. He called her friends, the few he knew. No one had seen her. No one had heard from her. Ron later said he considered calling the police that night, but decided to wait. Maybe she was staying with a friend. Maybe her phone had died. Maybe she'd show up in the morning with an explanation. But morning would bring something no one could have anticipated. Ron woke up on Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. Sneha still wasn't home. He decided he would call the police and file a missing persons report. At 8:46 a.m., before Ron could make that call, American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center, 3 blocks from Ron and Sneha's apartment. At 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 hit the South Tower. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapsed. At 10:28 a.m., the North Tower collapsed. Ron Lieberman spent September 11th, like millions of other New Yorkers, in shock, in fear, in chaos. But he had an additional nightmare. His wife was missing, and now the neighborhood where she'd last been seen was a war zone. In the days immediately following 9/11, Ron held out hope. Maybe Sneha had been caught in the chaos. Maybe she was in a hospital, injured and unable to communicate. Maybe she'd been evacuated and would find her way home. He put up missing person flyers, just like thousands of other families were doing. Sneha's face appeared on walls alongside pictures of firefighters, office workers, and visitors who'd been in the towers. Her flyer said, "Missing since September 10th. Last seen near World Trade Center." Days passed, then weeks. Sneha didn't come home. No hospital reported treating her. No body was recovered. The question that would consume investigators, courts, and family for the next 2 decades was this: when did Sneha and Philip disappear? Did she disappear on September 10th, before the attacks? Or did she die on September 11th, during the attacks? In the immediate aftermath of 9/11, the New York Police Department was overwhelmed. Thousands of people were missing. The city was in lockdown. Investigators were trying to identify victims, locate survivors, and maintain order in a traumatized city. Ron reported Sneha missing on September 12, 2001. He told police she'd been missing since September 10th, the day before the attacks. He explained about their marital problems, her job loss, the night she didn't come home. Police took the report, but in the chaos of 9/11, one missing woman who disappeared the day before the attacks wasn't their priority. There were thousands of confirmed dead, thousands more unaccounted for. Sneha's case was filed, but no intensive investigation began immediately. Ron was left to search on his own. He printed flyers. He walked the streets of Manhattan, showing Sneha's picture to anyone who would look. He called hospitals, morgues, and shelters. He checked with friends, family, and anyone who might know where she was. Sneha's family, her parents and siblings, flew to New York from Massachusetts where they'd been living. They joined a search. They visited hospitals. They checked the missing person centers that had been set up for 9/11 families. Here's where the narrative splits. Ron believed, and still believes, that Sneha disappeared on September 10th, before the attacks. He thinks something happened to her that evening or night, completely unrelated to 9/11. In his view, the timing of her disappearance the day before the attacks was a tragic coincidence, but nothing more. Sneha's parents, siblings, and extended family believed something completely different. They believed Sneha had been near the World Trade Center on the morning of September 11th and, being a doctor, had rushed to help victims. They believed she died in the collapse of one of the towers while trying to save others. These two competing theories would eventually end up in court, with huge legal and financial implications. Sneha's family and their lawyers pointed to several pieces of evidence. 1. Her location. Sneha's apartment was 3 blocks from the World Trade Center. If she'd been home or anywhere in the neighborhood that morning, she would have seen or heard the attacks. 2. Her medical training. Sneha was a doctor. Her family argued that her instinct would have been to help. In the chaos after the first plane hit, medical personnel rushed to the scene. Sneha would have done the same. 3. The shopping bags. The purchases Sneha made at Century 21 were never found in her apartment. Where are those bags? Her family suggested she'd come home that evening, perhaps late, perhaps when Ron was asleep, dropped the bags, and either stayed or left early the next morning. 4. Witness claims. In the years after September 11th, a few people came forward claiming they'd seen a woman matching Sneha's description near the World Trade Center on the morning of September 11th. One witness claimed to have seen her in the lobby of one of the towers before the collapse. These witnesses were never verified, and their accounts were vague. 5. Her character. Sneha's family described her as caring, compassionate, someone who would absolutely run toward danger to help others. They couldn't imagine her being anywhere near that tragedy and not responding. The evidence against the 9/11 theory. Ron and investigators who looked at the case carefully found problems with this theory. 1. No confirmed sighting. Despite extensive documentation of who was in and around the World Trade Center that morning, survivor accounts, security footage, phone records, there is no confirmed evidence that Sneha was there. 2. The timing. The shopping was at 4 p.m. on September 10th. For Sneha to have died on September 11th, she would have had to survive the entire night of September 10th and be in the area the next morning. Where was she that night? Why didn't she come home? Why didn't she call? 3. The bags. If Sneha had come home, where were the shopping bags? Ron said they weren't in the apartment. Police searched the apartment. No bags, no purchases, no evidence she'd returned. 4. Her state of mind. Given Sneha's personal and professional problems, Ron suggested that her disappearance on September 10th might have been intentional. Maybe she decided to leave, to start over somewhere. Maybe she was meeting someone, a friend, a lover, and had planned not to come back. 5. No body. Despite extensive recovery efforts at Ground Zero, which continued for months, no remains that could be identified as Sneha's were ever found. Dental records, DNA profiles, nothing matched her. In 2002, Sneha and Philip was officially declared dead by a court. But the question remained, was she a victim of 9/11, or had she disappeared the day before? As the months passed and the immediate chaos of 9/11 subsided, police were able to look more carefully at Sneha's case. What they found painted a complicated picture. Police searched Ron and Sneha's apartment thoroughly. They found no evidence of struggle, no blood, no signs of violence. Sneha's purse, containing her ID and credit cards, was missing, suggesting she'd had it with her when she disappeared. Her passport was in the apartment. Most of her clothes were there. This argued against the theory that she'd planned to disappear permanently. Why leave without your passport? But the bed linens she'd bought weren't there. The lingerie wasn't there. None of the items from her Century 21 shopping trip were found. Investigators pulled Sneha's bank records and credit card statements. The last activity was the Century 21 purchase at 4 p.m. on September 10th. Nothing after that. Her bank accounts have never been touched since September 10th, 2001. No withdrawals, no deposits, no activity. Sneha's cell phone records showed no activity after September 10th. The phone was either turned off, dead, or destroyed. No calls were made. No texts were sent. The phone never pinged another cell tower. Police interviewed Sneha's friends and acquaintances. Several confirmed that she'd been going through a difficult time. Some knew about her questioning her sexuality. Some knew about her drinking. Some knew about her marriage problems. But no one admitted to seeing her after 4 p.m. on September 10th. No one claimed she'd stayed with them that night. No one could explain where she might have gone. One friend told police that Sneha had mentioned wanting to start over, to leave her old life behind. But the friend didn't think Sneha was serious. People say things like that when they're frustrated, but they don't actually do it. One theory that emerged was that Sneha had been at Windows on the World, the famous restaurant at the top of the North Tower. Some wondered if she'd gone there for drinks or dinner on the evening of September 10th, perhaps stayed late, and was there when the plane hit the next morning. But there's no evidence for this. Sneha's credit cards weren't used at Windows on the World. No staff remembered seeing her. It remains pure speculation. Given that Sneha had been exploring her sexuality, some investigators wondered if she'd been at one of the lesbian bars in Greenwich Village on the evening of September 10th. Maybe she'd met someone. Maybe she'd gone home with someone. Maybe something happened. But again, no evidence. No witnesses came forward. No bartenders remembered her. If she was there, she left no trace. Bellevue Hospital, one of Manhattan's major hospitals, was close to Sneha's apartment. Some wondered if she'd gone there on the night of September 10th. Perhaps she was drinking, perhaps she was depressed, perhaps she was suicidal, and check herself in. But there's no record of her at Bellevue or any other hospital. This theory leads nowhere. At some point in the investigation, Ron volunteered to take a polygraph test. There were whispers, unsubstantiated, that maybe Ron had done something to Sneha. Maybe they'd fought. Maybe it was a domestic violence situation that went too far. Ron passed the polygraph. Investigators found no evidence whatsoever that he'd harmed Sneha. His alibi for September 10th, that he'd been at work, checked out. His coworkers confirmed he'd been in the office all day. Police reviewed security camera footage from Century 21 and surrounding businesses. The Century 21 footage clearly shows someone who appears to be Sneha shopping. But footage from outside the store, from street cameras, and from her apartment building is either non-existent or doesn't show her. In 2001, security cameras weren't as prevalent as they are today. Large portions of Lower Manhattan weren't covered. If Sneha walked home from Century 21, a 10-minute walk, she could have done so without being captured on camera. By 2003, the NYPD's investigation had essentially stalled. They had no leads. They had no body. They had no definitive evidence of foul play. They had no evidence she died on September 11th. The case was classified as an open missing person case, but active investigations ceased. For over 20 years, people have debated what happened to Sneha and Philip. The theories fall into two main categories. She died on September 11th, or she disappeared on September 10th. Theory 1. She died helping victims on September 11th, the hero theory. This is what Sneha's family believes and what they successfully argued in court. The scenario. After shopping at Century 21 around 4 p.m. on September 10th, Sneha returned to her apartment. Maybe Ron was still at work. Maybe he was there and they didn't interact. She put down her shopping bags and either stayed in the apartment or went out again that evening. On the morning of September 11th, she was home when the first plane hit at 8:46 a.m. She looked out her window and saw the North Tower burning just 3 blocks away. Being a doctor, her instinct kicked in. She grabbed her medical supplies and rushed toward the towers to help. She made it to the towers. She was in the lobby or on a lower floor helping victims when one or both towers collapsed. She died, and her body was destroyed in the collapse, which is why it was never recovered. Evidence supporting this. Her proximity to the towers. Her medical training and sense of duty. The chaos of 9/11 made it possible to be there without being documented. Many victims' bodies were never recovered. It explains why she was never seen or heard from again. Problems with this theory. No confirmed witness placed her at the towers. The shopping bags were never found. Why didn't she call Ron? Why was there no activity on her phone or cards after 4 p.m. on the 10th? If she came home, why didn't Ron see or hear her? Theory 2. She disappeared on September 10th, the night before theory. This is what Ron believes and what many investigators think is more likely. The scenario. After shopping at Century 21 around 4 p.m. on September 10th, Sneha didn't go home. Instead, she went somewhere else, maybe to a friend's place, maybe to a bar, maybe to meet someone she'd been having a relationship with. Something happened to her that evening or night. Maybe she had an accident. Maybe she was the victim of a crime. Maybe she decided to disappear voluntarily. Whatever happened, it was completely unrelated to 9/11. The timing the day before the attacks was just a tragic coincidence. Evidence supporting this. She didn't come home on the night of September 10th. The shopping bags suggest she may have been planning to go somewhere else. Her troubled personal life gave her reasons to want to leave. No confirmed evidence places her at the WTC on September 11th. It's more statistically likely she disappeared the night before. Problems with this theory. Where did she go? Who was she with? Why has her body never been found? Why has she never used her identity if she's alive? What happened to the shopping bags? Theory 3. She left voluntarily. Some believe Sneha deliberately disappeared to start a new life. The scenario. Sneha was deeply unhappy. She'd lost her job. Her marriage was failing. She was confused about her sexuality. The shopping trip was preparation. The lingerie and bed linens were for wherever she was going. She met someone that evening, left with them, and started over somewhere new. Evidence supporting this. Her troubled state of mind. The deliberate shopping. The fact she had her purse and ID. No evidence of foul play. Problems with this theory. She left her passport. She's never used her identity. Living completely off the grid since 2001 is nearly impossible. No confirmed sightings in over 20 years. Why not contact family if she's alive? Theory 4. She was the victim of foul play. Some believe Sneha met with foul play on the evening of September 10th. The scenario: after shopping, Sneha went to a bar or was meeting someone. She was assaulted, killed, or abducted. Her body was hidden or disposed of before anyone realized she was missing. The timing before September 11th made her case lower priority, allowing the perpetrator to escape. Evidence supporting this. Unexplained disappearances often involve foul play. She was alone and potentially vulnerable. Her body has never been found. No activity on her accounts since then. Problems with this theory. No evidence of foul play. No suspects identified. No witnesses to anything suspicious. Random violent crimes usually leave some trace. The truth is, we don't know which theory is correct. Each has pieces that make sense and pieces that don't fit. What we do know is that Sneha and Philip hasn't been seen or heard from since 4 p.m. on September 10th, 2001. The mystery of Sneha's disappearance took a legal turn that highlights just how contentious this case has been. In 2004, Sneha's parents filed a petition to have her officially listed as a victim of the September 11th attacks. This wasn't just symbolic. Being listed as a 9/11 victim would make her eligible for compensation from the September 11th Victim Compensation Fund, which could provide financial support to her family. Ron opposed this petition. He believed Sneha had disappeared the day before the attacks, and listing her as a 9/11 victim would be dishonest. The case went to court. In 2004, a judge initially ruled against Sneha's family, stating there wasn't sufficient evidence that she'd been at the World Trade Center on September 11th. But Sneha's family appealed. In 2007, after reviewing the evidence again, an appellate court reversed the decision. They ruled that the preponderance of evidence suggested Sneha could have been at the World Trade Center helping victims and should be listed as a 9/11 victim. This was a legal finding, not a definitive determination of what happened. The court essentially said, "We think it's more likely than not that she died on September 11th. Sneha and Philip's name is now included on the National September 11th Memorial. She's listed among the nearly 3,000 victims who died that day. For a family, this provided some closure. They could believe their daughter, their sister, died a hero, trying to save others in one of America's darkest moments. For Ron, it was more complicated. He divorced Sneha in absentia in 2004. He has moved on with his life, but has said in interviews that he doesn't believe Sneha died on September 11th. He thinks she disappeared the night before, and we may never know why. Where the case stands today. As of 2025, Sneha and Philip's disappearance remains officially unsolved. The NYPD has never closed the case. If someone came forward with new information, they would investigate. But realistically, after more than 23 years, the chances of finding answers are slim. If Sneha died on September 11th, her remains are likely unrecoverable. If she died on September 10th, whoever was responsible has had more than 2 decades to cover their tracks. If she's alive somewhere, she's maintained complete anonymity for over 20 years, which seems nearly impossible in our connected world. But we can learn. Sneha's case reminds us how tragedy can complicate truth. The attacks of 9/11 created chaos that made investigating her disappearance nearly impossible. The timing of her disappearance the day before the attacks has made it forever unclear whether the two are connected. It also reminds us that people are complex. Sneha wasn't just a doctor or just a wife. She was someone struggling with identity, career, relationships, all the messy parts of being human. Her disappearance might have nothing to do with 9/11, or it might have everything to do with it. Whether Sneha and Philip died as a hero rushing toward danger on September 11th, or whether she disappeared in the night of September 10th for reasons we'll never understand, her story is tragic. A young woman with her whole life ahead of her vanished. A family lost a daughter and sister. A husband lost a wife. And all of it happened in the shadow of one of the most documented days in American history. Yet her fate remains a mystery. What do you think happened to Sneha and Philip? Do you believe she died on September 11th helping victims? Or do you think something else happened the night before? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments. If you want to see more deep dives into lesser-known unsolved mysteries, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Like this video if you found Sneha's story compelling. In the next video, we'll explore another case that will leave you questioning everything. Until then, stay curious. Remember that behind every mystery is a real person with real loved ones. And never forget that sometimes the truth is more complicated than we can imagine. This has been the Vanished Files, and I'll see you in the next mystery.